Oh, dear God, it's growing bigger!
1992, we have arrived. This is the year that gave us the end of the Evil Dead trilogy, an iconic cheerleader vampire hunter, and one of the last great horror villain icons. As we truck along with our year-by-year breakdown, we present to you the 10 best horror movies of 1992. Years after the death of his father, Dr. Evan Randall Jr., aka Dr. Giggles, escapes from a mental hospital and heads back to his hometown to exact his revenge on the place that murdered his mentally ill father. The local residents soon find themselves under the demented care of a psychotic pseudo-doctor of death. Why is this movie so great? Simple. Dr. Giggles is perhaps the most hilarious horror villain in the history of the genre, touting side-splitting medical-tinged horror quips throughout the entire duration of the film. At one point, for example, he declares that it's time to do what doctors do best before grabbing a golf club to bash someone's brains in. It's terrific.
I need a doctor.
It's a good thing I make house calls.
London, 2008. Welcome to the future. We are introduced to Harley Stone, a motorcycle-riding, candy-bar-inhaling, chain-smoking cop who plays by his own rules. It wasn't always like this. Years ago, his partner was murdered and it pushed him over the edge to lethal weapon levels of maverick badassery. He chugs liters of coffee and the police chief gets pissed at him a lot. Yes, he wears sunglasses indoors and cracks one-liners while using gratuitous violence to subdue criminals. No, he doesn't use a department-issue firearm. Those things are for cucks. He ultimately comes face-to-face with a monstrous creature that has been stalking his streets. So yeah, this movie has it all. It's got the gore, nudity, tough guys with guns, one-liners, practical effects, and a monster ripping out hearts. Oh, and it's also got one of the best lines in cinema history. Guns. We need bigger fucking guns.
We need bigger guns. Big fucking guns!
This is the OG Buffy Summers, and she's often left in the shadow of her TV counterpart. That doesn't make her less of a slayer, it just means you really need to revisit the movie that started it all. For those of you who don't know, Buffy is a vapid LA girl whose life revolves around cheerleading and shopping. Her priorities are almost nil until she's visited one day by a strange man who tells her that she is next in a long line of girls chosen to hunt and kill vampires. Joss Whedon, screenwriter of the film and creator behind the series, is adamant about the fact that this film should not be considered part of the Buffy canon. Whedon has repeatedly and publicly voiced his disappointment with the film, which was not representative of his original screenplay. But let's all agree that guy is a douchebag and who cares about his opinion. This underrated horror comedy serves as the ultimate guilty pleasure. It's a film that chooses to embrace the absurdity of it all and run with it. The movie is hilarious and Pee Wee Herman is a one-armed vampire with hair like the dudes from Poison. What's not to love?
You're gonna wish you died.
Ooh, ah, ow, ooh, ah.
No landscape is as intrinsic to different types of cinema as the desert. The western, the road movie, the dystopian picture, science fiction, a symbol of the external conflicts of man and nature and the internal turbulations of emotion. With Dust Devil, we meet Wendy, a battered wife who has had enough. She hops in her beat-up car, flees her punch-drunk husband, and heads for the Namibian desert. To find what, exactly? Her own death, perhaps? On her way, she picks up a mysterious hitchhiker, one with an offbeat demeanor. What Wendy doesn't know is that her unconscious desire may have just come true. Looks like she just invited death in the flesh for a joyride. highly regarded child psychologist is showing signs of being unstable, but he completely snaps when he discovers that his wife is having an affair. His mental breakdown leads to the emergence of various other personalities, including a ruthless thug and a scared little boy. His descent into madness involves murder, revenge, and even the abduction of his own daughter, resulting in a suspenseful web of intrigue. Following a near merciless critical thrashing and catastrophic box office failure of his adaptation of The Bonfire of the Vanities, director Brian De Palma quietly slid back into what some critics deemed, quote, familiar territory for his follow-up. Indeed, Raisin Kane combines all the elements of a vintage De Palma picture and raises the stakes for both maker and spectator. It's easy to get lost in the film's mazy framework, but for those of you who are able to keep up with the various role reversals, dreamlike transitions, and densely interwoven plot threads, the journey is all the more rewarding.
That's right. You go sleep. I'll take care of everything. I'll just be you for a while, huh? Until this whole mess is cleaned up.
Maria has two appetites, sex and blood. Her vocation as a vampire is going along fine until two problems come up. She is interrupted while feeding on Sal the shark, and she begins to develop a relationship with the policeman who has been trying to put Sal away. Sal wakes up in the morgue very confused and very thirsty. He goes back to his old haunts and begins to create an organized crime family of vampires, while Maria and her policeman lover hunt him down. With innocent blood, director John Landis tries to replicate the quirky, gory vein he mined in An American Werewolf in London. It doesn't reach that level, but you'll still get a kick out of the film's virulent mix of guts and laughs. If there's one genre that Francis Ford Coppola isn't traditionally linked to, it's horror. That's a shame, because his one major foray into the spookier side of things is actually a lot of fun. We are talking, of course, about Bram Stoker's Dracula, an interpretation of the iconic vampire story that somehow manages to feel both innovative and traditional. With a rich gothic backdrop, Coppola visually redefines the horror story that for so long has been content to follow in the footsteps of Bela Lugosi, incorporating vampiric lore that has been left out of the previous adaptations of the story. Here, the Count is both tragic and erotic. Introduced as an androgynous figure, he transforms into a handsome, mysterious dandy who strolls around London in purple tea shades, shoulder-length, hair spilling out from under his silk top hat. When he feeds, he turns into a wolf-like creature, a literal sexual predator. Fighting against pop culture expectations and a century of vampire cliches, Coppola's approach is unique. Indeed, no one had ever seen a Dracula quite like this.
Welcome to my home.
Aside from the sadistic classic Hellraiser, Candyman is the rare film that brilliantly captures the alternating hideousness and the beauty of author Clive Barker's storytelling. In this case, the source material is Barker's short story, The Forbidden. The plot follows a graduate student completing a thesis on urban legends who encounters the legend of Candyman, an artist and son of a slave who had his hand severed and was then murdered. This film works on so many levels. It not only delivers a sophisticated, engaging story, but it also gave the horror world a tragic new boogeyman to fear. We get tense and scary scenes, well-written characters and story, in addition to healthy doses of the red stuff. What more could you ask for in a horror movie?
You are not content with the stories, so I was obliged to come.
Army of Darkness, of course, is the third film in writer-director Sam Raimi's Evil Dead franchise. In the film, after battling an ancient evil he unleashed from the Necrocon, aka Book of the Dead, Ash is sucked back to 1300 AD. During his quest to return to the presence, he must once again battle the undead. In short, Army of Darkness is the polar opposite of Evil Dead. Where the first one was scary, the second one was funny scary, this one is just plain funny. It's a wonderful cap-off to a near-perfect series, and truly one of a kind.
Now, let's talk about how I get back home.
Before Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy, New Zealand's Peter Jackson was a horror and splatter movie titan, giving us the low-budget, gross-out-fest bad taste, the extremely tasteless Meet the Feebles, the demented and deranged Heavenly Creatures, and Braindead, aka Dead Alive, one of the most over-the-top zombie movies of all time. The plot follows Lionel, a young man living with his strict mother. After Lionel becomes romantically involved with a young lady, he provokes his domineering mother's jealousy. Soon after, a toxic net from a Sumatran rat monkey at the local zoo transforms Lionel's mother into a hideous monster with a craving for human flesh. The finale, in which Lionel reduces a horde of flesh eaters to a mulch of blood, flesh, and organs, is probably the goriest scene ever. All in all, Braindead is a very funny, clever, and upbeat movie. It has rapid takes and quick witticisms with comic gore and slapstick action galore. A genre gem for sure.
Party's over.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to share your thoughts. What movies do you think should have been added to the list? What was your favorite movie of the year? Share all that in the comment section below.
This is my boom